Good morning, baby. It's the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. And I'm Doug Rice. Oh, one day, damn it, I can see the horns. I can see them. Good morning, Doug Rice. Yeah, don't drop your phones. Don't come unglued regarding this energy I exude. How you doing? All right, it's the 5th of September, 2023, and thank you for tuning in to see me, Doug Rice, the one and only. I mean, there's quite a few, but I'm sure I'm the Doug Rice they wish they knew. Oh, is it going to happen today? Is it going to happen today? Is it all going to go away? Is it all going to fade into oblivion? Is that the circumstance we're living in? Is this what we can expect? Because it's certainly what they project. I don't know. I just don't know. But I can tell you as a Negro, it is time to go. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, brothers. That's who I am. How's everybody doing? Look, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, 10:01 in the morning. You're probably at work, or some of you will catch me later. I'm sure the show might get greater, but if you feel like you are in a rut, thank you for tuning in to see me, because I will try to let you leave happily. I don't know. Who the heck knows? Where am I going? I don't know. So today, if you have not read the topic of discussion for this day, I hope a few of them come my way, because I've got Antoine Anderson and Detrina ready. And at attention, and need I mention, if you get out of line, they are going to boot your behind. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Well, let me say this by saying this. A couple of days ago or so, we went over who was Edom, who was Esau, and we saw quite a bit of who those individuals represent. And now, let's talk about and peruse the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Yes, let's do that, shall we? Now look, folks, I'm accustomed to hurting feelings only because I speak without fear. I have no fear because of my circumstances, because of how I was brought up and about in this life, and so I speak as fearlessly as I can on every show. I encourage you, if you will, to please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to oversell that bell, because I hear it don't work too swell. So don't count on the bell. Don't count on the bell to get you here. Be here every day at 10 and draw near. Okay. The secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Now, they're the only ones that call us blacks. I guess that's just the way they want to kind of attract the attention of those they wish to read through this, for Negroes particularly, and Jews. Now, we've established Edom, Esau, who they are. We also know, the infiltrator, the imposter, the Ashkenazi individual, but let's get deep into the relationship and see how steep it goes. Now, let me go ahead and first do a disclaimer, because I did it in the show's namer. I like that. I'm not Islam. Everybody knows that. I'm not a Muslim. I am Muslim in that I am doing everything I can to be in subjection to the Most High God. In that respect, all men are Muslim in that respect, but I do not practice Islam, and you may, if you will, get on your very knees and thank your God that I do not. I'm going to say that, all due respect, I would be Muslim if I didn't know any better, and I do, and so do they. They've said it. They know that Negroes are the true Israelites, and yet They continue to worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the way they see fit, and that is between them and the Most High. I will say that this is a deceptive-looking cover, deceptive, in that it does not truly convey what is within the sheets of this PDF that I will certainly give away for any donations that you send my way. Now, if I took the word relationship and we removed that relationship and inserted the word history, then the contents of this publication would be without mystery. The secret history between blacks and Jews. But I know that relationship, it draws in a few of you. It drew me in. So it did its job. Of course, it shows there underneath the Nation of Islam. And again, this is volume 1. I have yet to see volume 2, but I can tell you that if they ever publish it, they're through. And of course, I'm talking about the Jew, not about the Nation of Islam. Now, here's what this is about: the Jewish role in black history. Black slavery, excuse me. Secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Nation of Islam, the Jewish role in black slavery. And like I say, folks, as we go over this, we're going to go over it for a few days, maybe more. I don't know, depending on the feedback that I get from you folks, if you endure. And I will say that this reads like a very well-documented, well-prescribed history book regarding our Negro lives and the association, the close association we have with those that call themselves Jews. And so let's crack open this book and welcome the news. All right, first things first. Contents, a lot of contents. These folks are going to go through some historical stuff. It's going to, in my opinion, call their bluff. And I'm going to read it until all of us have had just about enough. Oh, yeah, we're on it. All right, so Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, Volume 1. And of course, prepared by the Historical Research Department, the Nation of Islam. Let's see what they have to say in opening. Blacks and Jews. And let me do this. I found that I could do this. Watch this. Bam! Blacks and Jews have begun to question their relationship and its strategic role in their individual development. This report is an examination of documented historical evidence and is intended to provide a historical perspective for intellectual debate of the critical issue of Black-Jewish relations. My goodness, what an opening. I don't know, I feel the ropening. I feel like I'm getting roped in. We're going to examine this, and I'm going to be very selective in what I share, because there's a lot of information out there. And so what we're going to do is take excerpts from different pages and headings, and we'll weave this story. It's a good one, worth threading. Here we go. Enjoy the show. All right, so let's take a closer examination. Introduction. Throughout history, Jews have faced the charge of economic exploitation of Gentile communities around the world. Indeed, no single group of people has faced blanket expulsion in so many places around the world as frequently as have the Jews. What an interesting and powerful statement to this introduction. The pattern of the charges are familiar. Monopolization, usury, sharp practices, the selling of cheap goods, frequent bankruptcies, etc. All such claims seem to preface the expulsion orders and are vigorously denied both by those charged and by the Jewish writers of history. But that is not the only charge made against the Jewish people. Jews have been conclusively linked to the greatest criminal endeavor ever taken against an entire race of people. a crime against humanity, the Black African Holocaust. They were participants in the kidnapping and forcible exportation of millions of Black African citizens into a wretched and inhuman life of bondage for the financial benefit of Jews. The effects of this unspeakable tragedy still being felt among the peoples of the world at this very hour. So let's pause there for a moment as this introduction, I would say, grabs you by the mental gonads and squeezes. And I can tell you, just the beginning of this is going to be, I think, a deep dive into some truth, into some things that they would rather you and I not really talk about, not really discuss. But we're going to continue because I think we've got a lot to show here. So let's go here. Here we go. Jews and the African slave trade. Let's see. Boom. Throughout the history of the practice, Jews have been involved in the purchase and sale of human beings. Shall I repeat that? I think I will. Throughout the history of the practice, Jews have been involved in one way or another in the purchase and sale of human beings. And that stands as a fact today, folks, because we do see so many who are caught in the crimes of human trafficking having Jewish names. And that is just a claim to their fame. This fact is confirmed by their own scholars and historians. In his book, A History of the Jews, Solomon Grazel states the Jews were among the most important slave dealers in European society. Lady Magnus writes that in the Middle Ages, the principal purchasers of slaves were found among the Jews. They seemed to be always and everywhere at hand to buy and have the means equally ready to pay. Henry L. Feingold stated that Jews who were frequently found at the heart of commerce could not have failed to contribute a proportionate share to the slave trade directly or indirectly. In 1460, when Jews were the masters of the nautical sciences in Portugal, that nation was importing 700 to 800 slaves yearly. All right, so what do we know? What do we see? In my estimation, and hopefully you can hear me, this expresses, just a solid foundation historically. We've got several different individuals who have made the claim that this is, in fact, a practice of those who call themselves Jews. And so I will not cower back from this. I will call it a fact. Now let's continue. Now here's an interesting bit of information. Columbus, Jews, and the slave trade. Let's see just who got paid. On August 2nd, 1492, more than 300,000 Jews were expelled from Spain, ending their 5-century involvement in the black hostage trade in that region. In fact, the Spanish Jews amassed large fortunes dealing in Christian slaves and became quite prominent with Spain's hierarchy. They had obtained the most important offices and positions of trust in the cabinets and counting houses of the rulers, and had maintained great influence over the regional trade, causing many to believe that the Jews exercised an unhealthy domination over the economy of the region. The rulers were convinced enough to order all Jews to either convert to Christianity or to leave Spain. Now, that's an interesting bit of historical fame. And so, as the show goes and we delve deeper into this publication, there are many headlines that say quite a bit to the Negro Nation. Now, I'm going to skip around this publication because I want to know, the different areas that we might investigate. Let's talk about this. Let's see what we can find. The Jews and slavery in colonial South America and the Caribbean. Interesting. Let's see what we're seeing. The Jewish Caribbean presence began in earnest with Columbus, with his initial foray into the region. With these early Jewish colonists and economic motivation for the exploitation of millions of Black Africans was introduced to the Western Hemisphere. The strategy seemed simple enough. Wealth would be amassed through a plantation economy driven by sugarcane. How interesting. The two companion enterprises of trading sugar and slaves were common occupations of Jews in the Middle Ages. Now, let's pause there just for a moment. I want everybody to understand, and my understanding here, is that as they took our place, as they traded spaces with Negro places and faces, they sold us into slavery, kind of a pincher movement, if you will. And imagine the kind of resentment and hatred that did instill. It's an interesting thing. I've often asked about this. People talk about World War II, and, I know how it got started, and I know how it got through. But I need to know why they just hated the Jew. And now we're getting a little bit of insight. And listen, I hope anybody that's listening isn't, in their feelings ready to scream anti-Semitism, because that is nothing more than some sort of Teflon that is used by the community of Jews to keep themselves protected from any kind of close examination. And that kind of examination must come from the Negro Nation, socially associated with their enrichment. And so I hope if you are incensed in any way, just do me a favor and go away. All right, so let's continue. A lot of information. There's over 300 some odd pages in this book, but I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. So let's take a look. The Spanish Inquisition. Much of the history of the Jews in the New World was affected by the forced conversion drives initiated by the Catholic Church. The infamous Spanish Inquisition brought a reign of terror throughout Europe as the church attempted to forcibly impose its doctrine upon the world. The inquisitors fueled the expulsion of the Jews from Portugal and Spain and reached even across the Atlantic to the New World settlements. The gruesome tortures employed by the inquisitors to secure allegiance had more than a religious connotation. The Jews were a target of the wave, but not just for practicing Judaism, but because they were suspected of teaching the false doctrine to the Black slaves. And that, my friends, comes from Frederick P. Bowser's African Slave in colonial Peru from 1524 to 1650, though not known to be a Jewish source, is nonetheless instructive. Portuguese slave traders were not merely smugglers who robbed Spain of silver. They were also Jewish heretics who practiced their faith in secret behind a public facade of Catholic orthodoxy and who inundated the American colonies with blacks indoctrinated in their own false beliefs. Now, this is interesting. These beliefs, embellished with African superstitions, were in turn spreading among the Indians. Well, this is interesting. The Seville merchants questioned whether African labor was worth all the smuggling and undermining of the church's work among the Indians, but they stopped short of appealing for the abolition of the slave trade. Now, what a sinister foundation they have laid. And again, folks, this is coming from the perspective of Islam. And so do not be alarmed. Don't get in your feelings. Don't listen to these words and have your mind reeling. I'm simply reading a lot of historical fact. Eat the meat, spit out the bone, and leave it at that. So we see here kind of a conditioned historical practice. And I will say that, this had to have merged and coincided with the usurping of our Negro station. And this must coincide with our enslavement here in this racist nation. They culminated all of their Jewish practices into the bastardization of what they call Jewish religion today. And I mean, what else more can you say? That's got to be the play. What else would they do in order to become a Jew? They can't become a Negro like me and like you. So what better way than to sell us into slavery, and take our religion and make it unsavory? So I'm not surprised at all. I've surmised that all of this is in line with the fall. Let's see what else they got to say. There's probably a lot more on the way. Who knows? All right, so this is an interesting bit of history. Let's go over this. The Jews murder the blacks of Suriname. Very interesting. The Jews murder the blacks of Suriname. From time to time, the Negro slaves revolted and escaped to the jungles, whence they descended on their master. For nearly a century, the savannah suffered from the depredations and had to fight them off. The Jewish planters had only themselves to depend on. Between 1690 and 1772, the black man of Suriname rebelled against the Jewish slave makers. The Maroons, or runaway former slaves, formed several communities in the inaccessible parts of the woods and were the most implacable and cruel enemies of the colonists. Some 6,000 ex-slaves had escaped into the interior of the colony by the early 18th century and proved too stubborn for the Dutch to overcome. Three major groups of Maroons became established in the interior regions and became known as the Jukas, Saramacanes, and Maturis. Jacob R. Marcus reported the conditions of the time. The whites felt they were being persecuted by their own slaves. How joyful. The result was a vicious circle of white insecurity, including Negrophobic repression and inhuman cruelty, to which the blacks reacted by murdering their white oppressors and escaping into the jungle. It was common for fugitive slaves to join the bush Negroes, who had been taking refuge in the wilderness ever since the days of the English occupation during the 1650s. From their jungle villages and fortresses, the embittered blacks sallied forth to wage a relentless war against their former masters. Plantation life thus had its full complement of perils, and the Jewish planters, led by their own militia captains, not only defended themselves against Negro raids, but also made frequent retaliatory excursions into the jungle. Captain David C. Nassy engaged in more than 30 expeditions. as a frontier ranger against the well-organized and desperate Negroes. The Indians, I'll say it again, the Indians, whose language Nassi spoke, were employed as scouts. Let's pause there for a moment. So what do we find there, folks? What are we listening to? What do we hear? Well, it seems to me, I mean, if Indians, I've heard a lot of people talk about natives or our brother. I'm cool with all that. If they are, that's cool. But they sure did hire out some natives to hunt us down. And again, don't get confused by the content, because listen, these same Jews stop Negroes dead in their track the minute they say they are a Jew. So what's up with that? Don't get confused. See, this is all coming into focus, and there ain't no more hocus pocus. It's obvious they took our position and created some bastardization of our religion. What a poor and ill-fated decision, because now they've incurred God's derision. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. All right, so delving back into the publication, let's see what else we find to share. Now, I don't know. How did they treat us? I mean, how do you think they treated the enslaved? And I'm going to go ahead and say the tribe of Judah. I'm going to say the royal line of David. That's what they were after. That's who they were after. That's who they wanted to usurp. That's who they were looking to cut off while they replaced them and made themselves a hated race. Isn't that amazing, Grace? Treatment and torture of the black slave. One is permitted to make a slave serve with rigor. Yet though that be the legal rule, it is the way of wisdom and the practice of saintliness that a man should be considerate and follow the path of righteousness, should not make yoke of slavery more heavy, nor cause his slave anguish. One should not abuse a slave by word or deed. He is subjected to service, but not to humiliation. One should not give free course to much anger and shouting, and one should talk to him with only gentleness. Let me pause right there for just a minute. Did somebody miss that memo? Was that something they handed out and people just balled it in a ball and just threw it away? What happened with that? I mean, because that's a lot to say about how you treat a slave. I'm not even going to try to pretend that made any sense, but let's continue, shall we? The harsh and cruel conditions faced by the black slave and the unspeakable tortures employed by the Europeans for the most minor offenses drove the African to a hopeless rebellion. The English explorer, Captain John Gabriel Stedman, assisted the colonists in the wars with the Maroons and wrote a narrative of his expedition. He described the black slaves in Suriname as being kept nearly naked, with a diet of little more than a few yams and bananas. Slave woman must yield to the loathsome embrace of an adulterous and licentious manager, and see her husband cut to pieces for endeavoring to prevent it. Many destroyed themselves by suicide, ran away, or if they stayed, they would grow sad and spiritless, and languish under diseases which render the patient a shocking spectacle. Many contracted tapeworms, sometimes 2 yards in length, and leprosy, which covers the whole body with scales and ulcers. The breath stinks, the hair falls off, the fingers and toes become putrid and drop away, joint after joint. The unhappy sufferer may linger sometimes for many years, separated from all society and condemned to a perpetual exile in some remote corner of the plantation. Let me pause right there. Seems these folks got a lot to pay for, huh? They got a lot to make up for. This publication comes the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Now, I converted this into a PowerPoint presentation. I'll provide it to you in any way you see fit, Negro Nation. But you know, as we read through this, we get the gist that they aimed for a target and they did not miss. So, you know, though this is written by the Nation of Islam, though I'm not a proponent of Islam, I'm not, an Islamic worshiper. The verdict is pretty clear here. These are individuals that are, culpable, responsible, 100% in a line for blame, if you will. And there's a lot in this book still. Now, they had, in fact, an old Hebrew prayer in time of revolt of the Negroes, and I think that's something I most certainly will show. Old Hebrew prayer in time of revolt of the Negro. Now, I'm going to try to put this in perspective, so let's see how this goes. I don't know. God, blessed and mighty through eternity, O Lord of hosts, who come as supplicants before thee to pray for the peace of the country as thou hast commanded. Seek the peace of the city whither I have banished you, and pray on its behalf unto the Lord, for in its peace shall ye have peace. O Lord, our King, exalted, mighty, and tremendous, creator of all, who givest answer in times of trouble, have compassion upon us, have mercy. Save and deliver those who are setting out to fight our enemies, the Negroes, cruel and rebellious. Isn't that nice? O Lord of hosts, lead them in peace, guide them towards life according to their desires, redeem them from the hand of the wicked, the oppressor, from sickness and ambush, from spoilers and plunders of the road, from evil and dangerous beasts, from snakes and serpents in the woods. I don't know if I can read too much more of this, if I could. So the black former slaves vigorously rebelled over 70 years, never relented, and in 1749, 1760, and 1762, concluded peace treaties forcing the Suriname government and the Jews to respect their communities. By the 1840s, when their numbers had increased to 8,000, government policy shifted from isolation to incorporation as the labor situation turned increasingly critical. The Maroon communities never lost their status as self-governing, self-sufficient entities and stand today as the greatest of the black fighting forces in the New World history. Well, this is an interesting mystery, isn't it? Listen, folks, you cannot be timid or afraid to look squarely in the face of history, no matter what it says. Now, this was written from a perspective of an Islamic slant, but it seems a fairly accurate rant. Let's see what more I can find amongst its pages, because this is some interesting shit about how they enslaved us. It's interesting. So here's another thing, very, very interesting. Jewish plantations. See, I'm going to say that during this phase and transition from Jew being a person of color, a Negro like me and you, to Jew being that of an Ashkenazi, Europeanized, lightened individual with blue eyes, this was this transition during this whole mission. Now, they talk about Jewish plantations. Let's see what they have to offer us. In May of 1668, an inventory of 15 plantations owned by 18 Portuguese Jews counted 414 black Africans being held as slaves. In Richard Gautiel's articles, Contributions to the History of the Jews in Suriname, he lists those plantations which evidently belong to Jews, showing how the Jews, even here, naturally clustered together. Obviously, many thousands of black African slaves were required to make these plantations productive. And so what do we see? In just this short writing, I'll tell you what it says to me. I mean, it's pretty obvious, folks. I mean, this is how they accomplished this joke. This is how they became the Jew, by selling us into slavery. Yeah, me and you. And not only that, causing us to forget about ourselves and only accept that which they have established as a fact, and let that fact be established, just like that. All right, my name's Doug Rice. It's 10:35. It's on the 5th of September, and I'm glad I'm alive. These are just a few of the offerings I have for Negroes who show their support. And might I go ahead and prove that by giving you our support links. There are support links, and we do appreciate it. Lot of what we offer, let me show you. Here are kind of a list of just a few of the PDFs that we offer. And we would hope that if you like what we do, if you like how I've read these PDFs to you, that you can show your support in using the platform apparatuses below. And thank you so much for tuning into the Doug Rice Show. All right, that's enough self-plug. Okay, I did it with a straight mug. I'm just joking. All right, got that? You see that? Huh? Do I need to show more? Sure, I'll show more. Why don't I just show the whole list of donations so you can at least know how to support this? How about that? No, yes, no, yes. I don't think I can find that. Oh, well. All right, well, some of you have seen the donation list, hopefully. I'm looking for it. It's a very long list here. I don't see it now, so now I'm kind of looking stupid. But if you haven't, Lord have mercy, look for it. Like I'm doing right now. There it is. I found it. Yay. All right, here we go. All right, so that's the donation list. Thanks for being patient with me. If you just donate $1, I'm going to give you 4 PDFs. I don't care. If you donate $4, I'll give you 4 PDFs. I'll give you any PDF you want. I got 300-page PDFs, 400-page PDFs, 900, 10-page, 11. But they're all information that are not compiled usually in the same place. And they're not really readily available for your Negro face. They don't want you to have some of this information. They would rather it keep out of the hands of our Negro nation. So up to $200, shave off the extra cost. You give me $60. I'll give you 30 PDFs and tell you to get lost. Just kidding. I won't tell you to get lost. Follow up on the Doug Rice Show if you do donate, though. $sign the Doug Rice Show for PDFs. And there you go. All right. Okay. There they are. They're the PDFs. Freeze it right there. Okay. There are a lot of good stuff in here. Okay. We're going to do a little bit more because I think there's more in store. And plus, I'm kind of, I'm kind of hooked on this, like phonics. There's a lot that we can talk about. A lot that there's a lot that we can discuss. Lists of plantation. I think I've already gone over that. Murder of blacks. How big is this thing? That's pretty big here. Hold on. Gotta find some more stuff. Slave contracts. Well, now, what do you think of that? I found something. There it is. Let's get back to this reading biz. Here we go. Slave contracts. They came with ships carrying African blacks to be sold as slaves. The traffic in slaves was a royal monopoly, and the Jews were often appointed as agents for the crown in their sale. When the king granted Pedro Gomez Renal, you want me to fucking read that again or what? When the king granted Pedro Gomez Renal the exclusive right to import slaves into the colonies. The contract contained a clause permitting slave to have on his ship 2 Portuguese who would be in charge of the sale of the Negroes and do anything else necessary among the people of the sea. Well, look at that right there. Just for you and me. So what is this separation, this ideation between Negroes, Jews, slaves, African, and might I peruse all the other variants that they use to describe themselves. Very, very interesting. It's clear that they stole our identity while they sold us into slavery. It's why I embrace the word Negro. I'll always love that word because it's obvious it means something. Moving on. Jewish movement into the Caribbean and South American regions was so dependent on free African labor that nearly every surviving document relating to these settlements discusses the supply of slave labor. The inducements to potential settlers always included the promise of an ample supply of Negroes. And in many or most cases, it was the primary deterrent. Each migration and settlement has its own social and political characteristics with regard to the condition and circumstances of its Jewish community. Among the Jews, however, the common characteristics of their New World settlements was the demand for African slaves or Negroes. Negroes, African slaves, Negroes. Isn't that interesting? So what is a Jew? I'll get back to the book. The European monarchies designated firms to supply slaves to their colonies. The European monarchies designated firms to supply slaves, Negroes, to their colonies. These contracts, known as asientos, were awarded for a specific time and covered a specific geographical area. The firm forming the asiento could subcontract some of its functions to others, and here the Jews were well represented. And if we look down here, look at all the Spanish names. Lopez, Noguera, Rodriguez, Alvarenga, Cruz. Now, what does that say to use Negroes that include other nations in our Negro creations? I'm trying to figure this out. How are you going to look at a Latino, Hispanic, whatever the hell you consider a Europeanized, straight-haired, white-skinned individual? How any of you can somehow associate with them with being true Jews is beyond me. They too are simply imposters, usurpers. Now listen, I've said this before, I'm gonna say it once more. We're the only group of people without a history, cut off, and it's no mystery that we know who got bought off. And you gotta understand, every one of us is owed the truth. Every one of us. Now, there can't be a duality of originality. There cannot be a duality of originality. Let me tell you why there's an off-cited, often very overlooked fact. You can't be from Israel and the Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? You can't have established yourself in Ukraine as a European, converted by King Boutral, or whoever his name was. You got converted, and so now you're sitting in Israel, in what you've now deemed the Middle East, and now you're saying that your origins originate from that place. That's a lie, to say the least. You understand how you've got an extra culture, you Ashkenazi, Ukrainian vultures? You can't have two cultures. You have usurped our culture and put it upon yourself. You've clothed yourself with being a Hebrew, a Negro, when in fact you're a Jew. And we see how that goes. So, again, folks, I don't know what to tell you. The more they come near us, the more we smell you. I mean, you feel that. So this publication is available. I'm hoping that you guys want to take a little bit of time to get it. Wow, I want to read a lot more, but it seems like I may have read it. I don't know. No, I haven't. It's just there's so much to read. So much to read, and I'm aware of the need. But I'm going to do this. I don't want to lose my voice. We've been at this for about 45 minutes, and I'm told that that's the sweet spot. So again, for those of you that have enjoyed what we read, what we look at, and what we see, please feel free to donate to the Doug Rice Show and not to me, because I got two capable and competent moderators, and they are excellent at what they do. I hope that they kept the conversation going. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, folks. It is Tuesday. Let me get myself in gear again. I will talk at you tomorrow at 10. And for all these Negroes here, hopefully I see you then. All right, I'm Doug Rice. I got to go. It's been good. Thank you for tuning in to the Doug Rice Show. Bye-bye. Hey, wait. Am I too late? Anybody leave? Don't leave. Don't leave. Listen. Let me tell you what you're missing. You know, we're complacent in our activity in this country. We are at ease. We are comfortable. How did that happen? I mean, how did it happen? And we were brought here in chains, and now we roam about freely with no sense of leaving. How strange. I don't get it, man. I believe it's time that Negroes began to look for the exits. I mean, I can't put together what's going on and what might happen, but there's a chance I'll connect it. Meanwhile, if you got to be out there in those public places, do me a favor. Get that goddamn grin off your faces. Okay. Now you may leave.